Good morning. Good, very late evening. Depends where you are. Depends when you're watching this. Gordon Causey here with Candy the Wonder Pup, who knows I'm doing a video, and of course, she now has come to expect that she's going to get this. All right. Sit. 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 Good. And now maybe I'll get peace for 15, 20 minutes, although I always seem to ramble on longer than I intended. Gordon Causey, Gordy Canuck, Grow a Set, depending on where you know me from. There's a couple people, at least one anyway, who watches my videos, who knows me personally. Wanted to share quickly a story that is about a week old. This news dropped within the last week. And I was surprised over the course of the week. I brought it up with a number of people, and I was surprised to find the number of people who were unaware of it. So I figured, why not do a little video on it? And that's the fact that, and I've linked an article down below from the Financial Post about the decision of Nestle. And they are going to be dropping from Canadian shelves. They're going to be removing their Delissio, their Stouffers, Lean Cuisine, and Life Cuisine products. So from the frozen food aisle, if you go to a grocery store, Walmart, whatever the case, check out the freezer section and check out how much space Delissio pizzas, Stouffers, frozen meals, Lean Cuisine, Life Cuisine. It's not an insignificant number of doors that are going to be impacted. And in the grand scheme of things, with everything going on in the world, we've got these 15-minute cities. We've got the federal government trying to impose on provincial governments in Canada that if they want to tap into, I think it's $100 billion that the federal government is dangling for healthcare, but they're insisting that provinces sign on to a digital ID, which I haven't read enough on, but I almost don't want to read that much up on it because a digital ID is too Orwellian, too dystopian, too false Reich for, I'm definitely not a fan of this, obviously. But so missing this little bit of news that Nestle is going to be removing some of the most popular food items from the freezer shelves kind of seems much less significant. But I think it's somewhat symptomatic of the world that, I've spoken before about how Klaus Schwab was addressing the G20 in Bali, Indonesia, I think a month or two ago, before the Davos World Economic Forum meeting. And he was talking about, we are in the transitionary phase to on this great reset, this move into what he's calling the fourth industrial revolution, what I and many others refer to as the Fourth Reich. Now, and I think this is part and parcel. I would invite you to look up. You'll find that Nestle is part of the World Economic Forum. I invite you to look at Bill Gates' investment in Nestle. And if you think about it, because of economic uncertainty, because of inflation, demand for frozen food products has never been higher. People in Canada are eating out at much lower rates than probably in the last 20, 30 years. People are eating at home much more frequently than they used to. And because we live in a culture of convenience and people are not accustomed to cooking and don't do it well, the frozen food section is hugely popular. And so what you have here is you have a segment of the market frozen foods, that any reasonable forecast is going to project that demand is only going to go up for these products. And you have Nestle that has 4 extremely popular, and I would have to assume incredibly profitable products: Delissio, Stouffer's, Lean Cuisine, Life Cuisine. And rather than increasing their offerings, instead they're going to be pulling these products from Canadian shelves. It makes, from an economic standpoint, supply and demand, your basics of supply and demand. You have established products that are popular, that are in demand, and demand's only going to be increasing over the coming years. It's backwards that a company like Nestle would be pulling these products. You would think they would be expanding their offerings. And yet the opposite is happening. They are saying it's a business-driven decision and that they are going to focus in on different areas that are going to become their core or whatever. So what are they foreseeing coming forward? And one of the things that I think should be on everyone's radar is with respect to the manner in which governments around the world are the way that farmers are being impacted by government direction. We've seen tariffs on things like fertilizer going way up. The cost of diesel fuel is rising exponentially. And this is hitting farmers very hard. In the Netherlands, the government is actually buying up, expropriating would be the better word, farmland, and farmland in some cases that has been in families for hundreds of years, family farms that have been in people's possession going back generations, as I say, for hundreds of years. And the government is stepping in and expropriating the land under the guise of climate change. And the agricultural food production is seen as having a huge carbon footprint. Then you have the war in Ukraine, and Ukraine is a major supplier of wheat on the world market. And if their contribution to the world wheat market is significantly reduced or eliminated, wheat is used in pasta, which are part of the Stouffer's and Lean Cuisine, Life Cuisine. It's Delissio pizzas, that's the crust. And so are we going to see a significant impact on the wheat market? The war in Ukraine has the very real potential to escalate now that West Germany, or I always want to say West Germany, I give away my age, Germany and the United States are sending battle tanks to Ukraine. And it's going to take Ukrainian tank crews, their armored crews, time, 6, 7, 8 weeks to get up to speed on how to operate these tanks. So what's going to happen if those tanks are used, we have the potential for a serious escalation in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, just as we enter seeding season, just as the Ukrainians would be seeding their wheat fields and other crops. And then if you look upon the decline in population growth has been slowing over the past 12 or so months, over the past year. The growth in population has been slowing. It's still growing, but it's growing at lower and lower and lower rates. And it's not difficult to envision a time in the not too distant future, within the next year or two, when the overall global population is going to start declining. Right now, it's still growing by in around 175, 180,000 people a day. But that was over 200,000. Now it's come down to 175. And if this progression continues, and I imagine that it will, eventually, in a year or two, we're going to get to a point where the number of deaths and the number of births even out. And then if the number of deaths starts superseding the number of births, then we go into population decline. And how much food, as the population, if the population starts declining, the need for food also declines. And which I've always believed is the main driver of everything we've been going through over the past 3 years, is being geared toward pushing us towards what was the number one guiding principle on the so-called Georgia Guidestones, which were demolished, I think it was August or September of 2022, blown up and then demolished. So, well, I mean, who cares? You know, so Delissio frozen pizza isn't there. There's still McCain, Dr. Utker, countless others. Your no-name brand. Well, I think we're going to see more of this. We're going to see more of this. We're going to see more plant-based protein products, crickets. It's interesting. You can look up. There was an article published July 1. I didn't link it below. I think I did an earlier video on this, though, and I probably did link the articles, but a CBC article on July 1 of 2022 announced, so just this past July, that in the city of London, Ontario, Canada, a company by the name of Sustain, which is an acronym, but if it's what everything's geared toward now, this word sustainability is everywhere. So this company with the name Sustain opened up the world's largest cricket protein processing plant in the world. And in the article, CBC quoted a professor from the University of Guelph, which is one of Canada's preeminent agricultural farming type universities. They're sometimes referred to as MU, jokingly. Anyway, this professor from Guelph University was talking about the urgent need to transition our diets away from meat, how there are a population of something like 1 billion flatulent cows on the planet contributing to climate change, and how there's an urgent need to transition people away from meat-based proteins to other protein sources. What was really curious is that out of that article, people latched onto it, myself included, and said, here you go. This is what we're talking about. Moving away from meat-based protein, you know, they want to have us eating crickets or insects or other protein sources. And then interestingly, around August sometime, CBC came out and wanted to debunk this notion that there's a move afoot to transition people away from meat-based protein to other sources like insect-based protein. And they started to refer to it as a conspiracy theory. Well, that's exactly what you were reporting on yourselves, CBC, in July, on Canada Day, no less. Easy day to remember, July 1st. They were reporting on it on July 1st, 2022. And then a few weeks later, they called their reporting a conspiracy theory. And now we have Nestle removing some of their most popular items from grocery store shelves. The article is down below. You're welcome to read it. If you want to comment or I see I have one whole person watching. So whoever it is, unless you're a bot, if you want to throw up a comment or say hi, Don't have much else to say, but this is the path we're on. And we got a digital ID that the federal government is dangling for, I think it's $100 billion in healthcare funding that's going to be shared with the province, provided you sign on to this digital ID. From what I understand, the Premier of Saskatchewan, his name is Mo, I don't even know his last name, and the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, both have indicated that they are not signing on to this. Doug Ford in my home province of Ontario, I believe he's endorsed it. Big surprise, he and Trudeau are like this. He loves Chrystia Freeland. Doug follows the money. And you and I are just collateral. So digital ID, we've got goodness knows how many cities in Ontario have signed on to, have applied to join this 15-minute smart city. And SMART is an acronym that means anything but smart. It means surveillance, monitoring, and I forget the rest of the acronym. The T is technology. This idea of everyone living within a 15-minute radius of their residence and being able to, everything you need will be within 15 minutes, and you'll only be allowed so many trips outside your designated smart zone. The ghettoization of Canada. That's what they used to call them, ghettos. You're not allowed to leave. You've gone over you've left your zone too many times. And this is the type of world that's being mapped out. And it's being done in plain sight. You can just check into the World Economic Forum. You can Google 15-minute cities, and you can see all the Canadian cities that are signing on to it. I looked at the province of Alberta. They've got Edmonton, Calgary, Lethbridge, Red Deer. It's got to be 80% of the population are falling under this. Their municipal, city, town governments are signing on to this agenda. And at some point, will Canadians, will Americans, will Europeans, will there be a pushback against it? Bread and circuses, to quote, I forget the name of the Roman poet who came up with that little line, but keep the people entertained and keep them fed, and everyone will turn a blind eye to their rights, freedoms, their liberty being taken away little bit by little bit by little bit by little bit. And, people are getting all hyped up now about the Super Bowl, right? Kansas City against whoever. I'm wearing a Green Bay Packers shirt. It was given to me. I'm not going to watch the Super Bowl. Apparently, according to Bayer has ads out now, or public service announcements. And there's another report out saying that be careful watching the Super Bowl or other sporting events because you're at increased risk of a heart attack. When did we ever hear this before? Never. Never once heard anyone say that watching the NBA Finals, Super Bowl, World Series, or whatever championship that it could cause a heart attack. But apparently now, suddenly in 2022, for some reason, this is coming out. But staying on topic, so I guess we're looking at June, July. They're saying that they're going to be phasing these products out over the coming 6 months. And if you read that article, it quotes a gentleman by the name of Sylvain Charlebois, who, interestingly enough, I know this man. We used to work together. We used to work at the same marketing company. I was mid to late 20s, and Sylvain was 18, 19, very young. And he was an incredibly sharp kid And then lately I've noticed that and I say kid, now he's kicking around 50 years of age. He's probably in his late 40s. And he's now director, senior head of food economics. He's been branded as Canada's food professor. And he's been all over CBC, CTV, and CBC News being interviewed because I myself did a podcast with him a few months back, because when I saw that, I'm like, it can't be the same Sylvain Charlebois that I used to work with, and sure enough, it was. And he also writes a column for Journal de Montréal or Journal de Québec for I think for Québecor, for their newspaper outlets. He's been on TVA. He's on the French language media too, media as well, because he's French Canadian. French is his first language. And according to him in this article, it takes about 2 years for a company to develop and launch a frozen food product. Like, it doesn't just happen overnight. So what we're going to see is you're just going to see, that those spaces within Canadian retailers, within the grocery stores, I can't see them leaving them empty. What they'll do is they'll just increase the number of Dr. Oetker pizzas and other brands. And likewise, instead of Lean Cuisine, Life Cuisine, Stouffers, it'll be Swanson and other frozen food entrees that'll take over that shelf space. But it means that there's going to be less choice for Canadian consumers, and I think that's something globally, not just Canada, but throughout the developed world. We're going to see less and less choice in the coming months, in the coming years. And our world, the intention is to have our world shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And I wish I had a solution to it. The only solution I can offer is faith. The kings of this world, the masters of the self-appointed owners of this world, have a vision. And you need to look beyond the horizon. So I'll leave you there. Just about a 23-minute video. Thanks for watching. God bless whoever gave me the thumbs up. Thank you. You're welcome to like and subscribe and do all those other things. Give me my little dopamine rush to the brain. Have a good night. We'll talk to you in a few days.